so we can do the Pledge of Allegiance and prayer. Delegate Chang.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Please join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. During this morning's prayer reflection, we remember the lives and public service of the Honorable Mary Ann Love and Victor Solon, two members who served in the Maryland House of Delegates, who both represented 32nd Legislative District, and this esteemed Anne Arundel County delegation, who both passed away last week. From 1993 to 2015, Delegate Mary Ann Love served in the Maryland General Assembly. Her slogan was to keep love in the House. Along with charity, she served with compassion and a collegial spirit. As a trailblazer, she was the first woman to serve as chairwoman of this delegation and paved the way for women who followed her in serving in the Anne Arundel County delegation in the Maryland General Assembly. She truly did spread love within this body and the community she served. From 1991 to 1994, Delegate Victor Solon served in Maryland General Assembly and will be remembered for his wittiness, charm, and community pride. As a lifelong resident of Anne Arundel County, he considered it a great honor to serve as a past chairman of this delegation. Throughout his public service and career in the military, Anne Arundel County government as a legislator, he fought for social justice and believed everyone deserved a chance in life. As a visionary in revitalization, his creativity ignited the renaissance of Anne Arundel County's present vibrant landscape. Both Delegate Mary Ann Love and Victor Solon are testaments to us who are currently serving with the great honor and responsibility we have in public service, and to make it count while we are here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate Chang, for that prayer and that beautiful tribute. While I didn't actually have the chance to know Delegate Love, I did have a chance to know Delegate Solon, and they certainly will be missed. So with that, what we will do next is introduce our visitors, our guests, I guess I should say, not visitors, but guests. And so I see Senator Beidel has joined us. Thank you, Senator. I see Senator Big Ed Riley. Glad to have you with us this morning. And I see the members, several members from our Board of Education who will be speaking to us shortly. I see President Tobin. I see Ms. Schallheim, Ms. Corkindale, Ms. Dent. And if I miss anyone, I'm sure Mr. Silkworth. And I'm sure there may be a couple others who may show up. And if there's anybody I missed, I will certainly try to capture you before we move on.
Ms. Ellis. I'm sorry, Ms. Ellis is with us.
Thank you, Ms. So, Melissa, I apologize. That's like 2 weeks in a row. So I am just totally off my game, but welcome this morning, and we look forward to hearing from you shortly. So at this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the gavel over to Vice Chair Bagnall, because we have a bill hearing next. We have one bill hearing today, and we will actually have a number of legislative bond initiatives. So Vice Chair Bagnall, you have the con.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also wanted to take a point of personal privilege and also welcome Senator Elfreth. I don't think we caught her in our welcoming of guests. Mr. Chair, I turn it over to you to present your bill.
Thank you. Vice Chair Bagnall and members of the Anne Arundel County delegation, I respectfully request a favorable report of House Bill 718. This bill would alter the number of members of the Local Development Council for a video lottery facility located in Anne Arundel County, requiring the county executive of Anne Arundel County to appoint a certain number of delegates to represent a certain district or their designees to the Local Development Council. and generally relating to the local development councils for the video lottery facilities in Anne Arundel County. This bill simply adds a third delegate who represents the district where the communities surrounding the video lotteries facilities are located. Again, I request favorable support for House Bill 718. Be happy to address any questions, and I thank all of my colleagues in the House delegation for signing on to this legislation.
And I see our first question from Delegate Bartlett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have just one quick question. And we talked about this briefly, but I haven't gotten an answer yet. And not necessarily from you, Mr. Chair, but I just haven't gotten an answer. The paragraph that I mentioned to you about the change with respect to the 3 county execs, either if you could explain that part of the amendment, or if someone else could, if you could explain that part where the county execs are out and it's just the Anne Arundel County exec.
Sure. I think the paragraph you're referring to talks about Prince George's County and Howard County having a input into the process, and that was taken out because, as we had discussed and I clarified with Matt Carpenter, and so Matt, you may want to further explain if I don't do the explanation justice, is because we're talking about the casino, Maryland Live, that is definitely not in a tri-jurisdiction area and refers only to that specific video lottery terminal facility. Matt, would you like to add to that?
You stated that very well.
Okay, that makes sense. And I think that maybe we were just following along because we had other impact fee councils or whatever. Maybe that's the reason why that language was there. Thank you very much for that explanation, and thank you for this bill, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Senator Bidle. Senator, you're still on mute.
All right, there we go. I'm on my phone, which I'm not quite as good with my phone. But thank you, Chair Rogers, for the bill. I just want to let you know I am cross-filing it in the Senate. So hopefully when you vote this bill, you'll also be voting the Senate bill. And welcome to the Impact Fee Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Biden.
Thank you, Senator. Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a point of clarification, is there only one video lottery terminal and it's Maryland Live, or is there others like Elks Club?
Maryland Live is the only video lottery terminal facility that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Just giving it another moment to see if there are any other questions. Thank you very much, Chair Rogers. I'll give you a moment to return to your seat.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bagnall. Just in case folks are wondering why I'm wearing red, today happens to be Women's Heart Health Month. And so I was informed of that. And so in solidarity with that very important recognition, I wanted to make sure that I wore my red. So I don't normally put a shirt over a tie and do that sort of thing, but today is a day that we want to recognize that very important celebration. So with that, the next thing on our agenda is an opportunity to have a conversation. And I will remind everyone that, we have several legislative bond initiatives that will follow, and we know that we try to keep this meeting at about an hour. So I just want to offer that up to our guests that will be joining us for this discussion about Anne Arundel County Public Schools. And so I know when I had a conversation with President Tobin before I turned it over to her, we both thought it was important as fellow elected officials that we have an opportunity to sort of kind of have a conversation with one another and to do that in this forum so that if we had questions we might be able to answer them, and then Also recognizing the fact that when we did have our legislative priorities meeting a few weeks back, there were a number of folks who were unable to attend. So I think that President Tobin will probably take the opportunity to mention just at a high level a couple of those things that might be helpful to the delegation as we're pondering education issues during this session. So with that, I'll turn it over to President Tobin.
Chairman Rogers, thank you very much. Thank you and good morning, obviously, to all of you, Vice Chair Bagnall as well, and members of the delegation. Again, I know it was mentioned earlier, but just to say again that I'm joined by a number of colleagues. First, Vice President Robert Silkworth, and then Ms. Corkadell, Ms. Dent, Ms. Ellis, and Ms. Schalheim from the Board of Education. And we're delighted to be here and very grateful for the invitation. As Chairman Rogers mentioned, this is an opportunity to add a couple of updates and I hope offer a chance for a conversation. So a couple of things I wanted to just quickly, as our time is short, I will be as brief as possible. Obviously, as we all know, we continue to work through the current COVID conditions. Fortunately, as we all also know, the Omicron numbers are beginning to go down. As such, we have not had in the last week or so any more outbreaks and need to close schools. So we are moving forward, keeping students in school, which is of course our goal. So we hope that continues, and we will be, as always, monitoring that. But so far, the news is looking better. I wanted to touch briefly also on a couple of updates in the area of transportation. I know that this is of concern to a number of members. So a couple of things around sort of legislative changes that are coming through. We have gotten the regulations from the bill, the law that was passed with regard to opening up the possibility of transporting students with vehicles other than just school buses. This is something that I think we welcome, and the superintendent's budget, which he proposed in December, we are in the process of considering, I think has up to 8 vans listed in it. That, of course, will free up 8 bus drivers. So it allows for a much more efficient use of our fleet and opportunities for CDL licensed drivers to be freed up. The other aspect that's just recently come down is, as I think those of you who were at our legislative breakfast in January heard, at the federal level, there was a determination that a portion of the requirement for a CDL license, particularly the under the hood section, could be waived. We were waiting on MDOT to process that and agree to it. Essentially, they have. And so we have currently, I believe, 8 drivers lined up for a special MVA day tomorrow, this Saturday, to take their licensure exams. And for them, that under the hood section will be optional. So it is our hope that that too will both make it a little less onerous for folks to take that test, and will again free up and provide more drivers. So we continue to move forward. Our numbers are shrinking with regard to routes that are not covered, and we continue to move in a good direction with that. But it is a challenge, and the very fact that the feds recognized that they had to waive a section of that CDL license is a testament to the national crisis that we're in with regard to bus drivers. So we're grateful for that, and hopefully we will begin to see some increased easing the crisis here locally with regard to bus drivers. Obviously, also, there are things we have noted for you that we hope you will attend to as we move forward with the implementation portion of Blueprint for Maryland's Future. We all want this to succeed, but as with all legislation, as it hits the ground, certain things become apparent that weren't necessarily apparent at the initial work that was done. These include everything from early child education funding streams and staffing. Of course, many of you know Jeanette Ortiz, who is our legislative affairs director, and she is in the halls every day, and I'm sure many of you have had conversations with her about this, but we continue to monitor it. I will note that something else has emerged since our January discussion that I want legislators to be aware of. As you probably know, one of the core aspects of Blueprint for Maryland in its elevation of teachers and teacher salaries and career ladders, et cetera, is an emphasis on national board certification as one aspect of, increasing and ensuring that we have absolutely the best teachers available. I think legislators need to be aware that the NBC certification is not available to all teachers. So, for example, a world language teacher can't get an NBC certification. There are other certifications. And so it may be that we will be asking you to consider loosening that a little, because we don't want the inequities that will ensue when teachers in certain subjects can get that certification and therefore get the raises and so forth that go with it, where other teachers who do the same level of work, but the certification is a different one, are not eligible for those raises. So that is just something to put on in your minds as you think through some of the issues that we're up against. Finally, I'm just going to say again, I've said this to you before, but I think it is something to be very cognizant of. We have the 6th oldest building fleet amongst school systems in Maryland. We grew by 8,000 students in the last decade, and we are projected to grow by 10,000 more in the decade ahead. And we have got to make quicker headway on our backlogs if we're to provide all of our students with the educational environment they deserve. So those are some quick highlights. I appreciate your time, and I'm happy to take additional questions. Thank you.
So again, President Tobin, thank you for those remarks. I see we do have some questions in the chat. And again, I want to acknowledge Vice Chair Silkworth, Ms. Shawheim, Ms. Ellis, Ms. Corkindale, and Ms. Dent. And so thank you all for being here this morning. So now we'll turn to questions. And the first question I see is Delegate Lehman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, President Tobin, for the briefing and the great work that's being done. Thank you for, sounds like really thinking outside the box on how to solve some of the challenges of the education system. I was curious, going back to the transportation issue, if you could briefly describe the alternative vehicles that you're talking about using, transporting kids. What exactly are they? How big are they? How many children will fit in these vehicles?
Generally, these are sort of the 15-person van kind of vehicles. I think it can think about what the County Department of Aging uses.
Okay.
It's that kind of vehicle that we're looking at. Obviously, one of the reasons it took a very long time to get these regulations is there had to be due diligence in assuring that safety and all the other critical aspects for transporting our children were taken into account. And this will generally be for our McKinney-Vento students, otherwise our students who are housing insecure. And in some cases are special education students who often there'll be, very small numbers of students in a whole school bus because it's a very particular route. So,
Right.
So the chair recognizes Delegate Bagnall, followed by Delegate Henson, followed by Delegate Pina Melnick.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation, for being here today. I have one quick question and then just an overarching ask from you, which is I know there was some pushback with the announcement of the new start times, just the conflation of the driver crisis and the new start times. So is there a thought to being able to pivot if it looks like we're not sort of through the crush of that? And also, obviously, we want to set you up for success. So what can we do to aid you in moving forward?
Thank you very much for that question, Delegate Bagnall. So with regard to the start times, yes, I didn't mention that announcement just came out yesterday, that this has been a long planned process, but we will be moving school start times to align with the recommendations that have been available and made for at least a decade with regard to developmentally appropriate times for students to start school at different ages. Younger children wake up earlier, teens are clocked differently, so forth. Yes, I think there's some confusion that given the difficulties we've had with transportation this year, we can't manage a change, so to speak. I will tell you that we've had a consultant working now with our transportation department for quite a while. And one of the things that came about as part of looking into changing school start times was the recognition that we had to really do some work to bring our transportation department as a whole up to where it needed to be. It had been very under-resourced, and we were seeing the results of that. So part of the work in moving these start times has also been to bring about, and this is currently happening, our staff working with the consultants and routers and so forth, to bring about much greater efficiencies in our bus transportation. We are also looking forward to bringing out, for example, an opt-in setup or opt-out, depending on what works best, for bus transportation, because we haven't really known for sure who uses the buses and who doesn't. So this is a holistic change that we're making. We're not simply changing start times and just leaving everything else alone. So that's a lengthy response, but I hope it's helpful. Thank you very much for your broader question as well, Delegate Bagnall. And I think this is such an important, one of the reasons I think that Delegate Rogers and I felt this was so important to have this conversation with our delegation, because we're all in this together. And I think there's just no question that the level of importance and work that boards of education generally do has become evident through the pandemic in a way. It was always the case, but I think many people didn't quite focus on it. So we, each of us who are elected, obviously represent a councilmanic district. We have the same number of constituents that our county council members do. We don't have staff, and I know there's recognition that the remuneration is of a very different level. We also have a rather difficult situation coming up in 2024, which is that we will all be up for election, except for the student member. And anyone who's ever served on a board of any kind, I think, is probably well aware that it is not wise to have the entire board turn over at the same time. So I would urge legislators to think about that going forward. Obviously, 2024 is what it is, but as we move forward, the structure is critical here to support the governing, the continuance of governance, quite frankly, of the system. Those are a few things that come to mind. There are many others I would be happy to discuss with you, but I think those are some critical things. I will say we are well aware. We have been struggling over the last couple of years with a very difficult transition between elected and between appointed and elected. We have also been doing that while, to a large extent, confronting COVID. This has led to a number of the issues that were brought up in your last meeting with regard to the length of our meetings and so forth. I think if you look at where we've been over the last few months, we're headed in the right direction. We are committed to those changes. We hear the same concerns from our constituents that many of you do about this. And we want parents to be engaged, and we want parents to know they can be engaged. So thank you, and thank you for your question. And of course, we are happy to continue this conversation.
Thank you so much.
Delegate Henson, and then Delegate Pina Melnick.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Madam President, for the presentation, and thank you for including implementation of the blueprint in your comments. I am asking specifically for an update on where we are with deploying wraparound services for our students, particularly in the community schools.
So we will be moving, of course, to quite a few more community schools. We have asked, I think we brought this up, I brought this up in our previous comments. We are concerned moving forward. While we've had our current community schools are doing beautifully, it remains the case that the grant structure coming out of the concentration of poverty grants coming from Blueprint has absolutely no administrative part of it, right? So we have a situation where, for all the good reasons we understand, 100% of the money was intended to go directly into the school. The problem is you now have community coordinators, school coordinators having to do all the administrative work rather than having the ability to centralize some of that work, as we do, for example, with Title I schools. So we have the opportunity with Title I to have somebody at our central office who does the purchasing, certain contract negotiations, things that you really don't want to burden your community school coordinator with, because you want them doing what they do, being on the ground, ensuring those wraparound services are exactly what that community needs and are available to them. Currently, I believe the threshold for centralizing the program is something like 40 schools. That's exceedingly high. So I would urge legislators to think about moving that. I think we've suggested more like 10 or 12 schools as your threshold to centralize that, and possibly more broadly to think about sort of in reality that those grants need to acknowledge that this administrative work has to be done somewhere, and where is the most efficient place to put it. So I hope that helps to answer some of your questions, Delegate Hanson.
Delegate Pina Melnick.
Thank you, and good morning. Thank you so much for being in front of us. As you know, you get the emails as we do, right, from constituents, and we just had a hearing on the board just last week. So I have three very quick questions based on my constituents' concerns. The first one is, what specific step has the board taken to be more efficient and effective? And then followed by that one will be, how will the board measure its progress?
So I think we have been working, and I've been on the board now since November. Well, I was sworn in December of 2020. We continue to work to streamline our agendas, to streamline our questioning, and to work with our staff, quite frankly, to make sure that we get all the information ahead of time. Because we want to make sure that when we're in our meetings, it's after we've reviewed the information we need to make a decision, rather than at times having to make those decisions on the fly, so to speak. And so the measure, quite frankly, is, have we done the business of the school system? Are our meetings coming in under an appropriate level of time? Now, I will say at the hearing last week, reference was made to the Gibson audit, which was technically 2020, but the interviews were done in late 2018 and 2019, just as the board was switching over from appointed to a hybrid at that time. And I think that was a very difficult moment, because an appointed board, frankly, just functions very differently. There's a different kind of accountability. There's a different, in some ways, there's less visibility, right, for appointed members in the community. And so it's I believe one of the reasons the legislature wanted to pursue the possibility of an elected board is that accountability, right? It's our job to oversee the system. But that means we have to do a lot of questioning to make sure we're really getting to the bottom of what's going on. As I said, we're trying to balance that now. We need to do that questioning, but that requires having information well ahead of time. In an appointed situation, the emphasis is not on that. So those are my initial answers to your question, Delegate Peña-Melnick. I hope that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. Yes, and my last question, if I may, Mr. Chairman, is
yes, then we're going to go Delegate Peña. Yes, we'll do that. The chair is going to recognize Senator Beidel next, and I would just ask, in keeping what President Tobin just explained, that we keep our answers short and tight, because we do have a number of other things on the agenda, and we're going to try to keep this at 1 hour. Delegate Peña-Melnick.
Yes, thank you so much for the consideration. The last one is, what specific quality is the board seeking in a new superintendent?
Well, I think we are currently in the process of seeking our search consulting firm, which is the first step. And right now, that's is going to determine the timeline, and we will be sending out some public information on that, so the public's aware of where we are. That being said, we are seeking, frankly, an excellent candidate with expertise, obviously, in being able to run a very large system. We are the 37th largest school system out of 4,000 roughly in the US. And we are seeking someone who has a vision that matches the board's with regard to an emphasis on equity, on providing an excellent education to all of our students, and to also being able to grasp and address the profound moment of change we are in public education right now. We have just come through, or are coming through, a pandemic that has upended almost everything we've been used to doing. We need someone, I believe, who can embrace that and understand how to integrate it, all the best things that have come out of that, integrate it into the entire system. And we will be pursuing a nationwide search. So thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Beidel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two quick comments and a very quick question. President Tobin, have you seen that I have a bill, Senate Bill 510, to increase your compensation? And I think that Delegate Bartlett will have a cross file, but I don't see the number yet. So we appreciate the work that you're doing. On the entire board turning over, when I was chair of the delegation, we discussed that at length. The entire county council turns over. And so there's precedent, and it's been that way for years. Not everyone's going to run for re-election, and not everyone's going to decide not to run. So you should have some people left over, but it's the way it's been done in the county, and it's worked well. My final question is, when you begin interviewing your final candidates for the superintendent, will it be done publicly, or will it be done in the back room like a personnel issue and we don't hear the discussion? Thank you.
So first, yes, Senator Beidel, I've seen the bill, and thank you very much. recognition. I will say that we will probably be pursuing a process somewhat similar to the last process. We want as much transparency as possible in this. Exactly what the individual final interviews of finalists will look like, again, we want as much transparency as possible. Until we've taken the next step, I'm not going to commit to exactly what that's going to look like, whether it's, actually in-person public interview, or do people watch via Zoom, or how are we going to do it? But we are seeking as much transparency as absolutely possible. To your final comment about the turnover, I do understand that's how the county council works. I would suggest, and I simply throw this out for you, boards are a little different. And we are in the position of a couple of things that the county council is not. We employ our executive. We are continuing the governance work of a school system, which is a somewhat different structure than being the legislative branch of a county government. And so we fill many roles. We are quasi-judicial, we are quasi-legislative, and we are quasi-executive. There is a kind of corporate memory that has to persist. I agree with you in practical terms. It's very unlikely that everybody would turn over at the same time. It remains technically a possibility, and I just think that does have to be weighed. So, that's just my thought. But thank you, and thank you for your comments.
So, on behalf of the House delegation, President Tobin, and members of the board, we really appreciate you taking the time to come before us today and have this dialogue. We hope that this will not be the last time that we have a chance to dialogue. Perhaps we could do this again in a less formal setting, if you will. But I think it's important that we do have this discussion. And I also want to thank you for the important work that you're doing on behalf of our sons and daughters and our teachers and our parents. And so it's recognition. And I think that, Senator Bidel, as well as Delegate Bartlett's bill, sort of takes that in consideration. And so we do want to thank you for all that you're doing, and we thank you for coming before us this morning. So, not seeing any other questions, we're going to move on to the bond bill initiatives. It is now 9:09, and we can still meet the target. So with that, the first folks that we're going to, and by the way, you're welcome to remain on the meeting if you like, but we certainly understand if you have other things that you have to get to. We'll call the Pasco Crisis Stabilization Center.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. It is my great privilege this morning just to introduce this really important bond initiative to the delegation. In a normal year, the work that the Pasco Crisis Stabilization Center does would be incredibly important and valuable to our community and to our county at large. But 2 years into a pandemic, this work is absolutely vital and essential for our community. They are asking for $350,000 to help implement a brand new center here in Anne Arundel County to expand the work that they're doing to help not only our veterans, but everyone within our county dealing with mental health crises, behavioral health issues, and going so far as into substance abuse and opioid issues. This new center is very exciting because they actually support the Anne Arundel County Police Department and the work that they do in reentry and community collaboration program. And it's also within, this is such a fun fact, it's going to be within a 30-mile radius of 6 hospitals. And so they're going to directly reduce the cost of emergency departments here in the county and across the state by allowing access to immediate substance use treatment. And so I'm just very privileged to introduce this. We have a few other people to speak on it, and I just urge support of this delegation in supporting the mental health and substance use treatment of our residents.
Thank you, Delegate Munoz. Who is the first person you'd like to call?
I believe, I'm not sure who wants to go first, but either Mr. Bruce Bariano, or I think we also have on the call Miss Catherine Bonis-Carnari. Sorry, I said that wrong.
Okay, Mr. Bariano.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Anne Arundel County Delegation. It's a pleasure to see you all. I'm going to leave the conversation to Catherine Bonacontri, but I just, as an introduction, so sincerely and so strongly want to thank this entire delegation for its continuous, unwavering support and appreciation for the Pascal Crisis Stabilization Center. It's unique and unlike any other county has. It's doing a fabulous job for the citizens and residents of Anne Arundel County in terms of dealing with very difficult real-life, day-to-day problems. And the support and the collaborative work that we have with this delegation is so terribly important and helpful to us. And I know I speak for Ms. Bonacontri and the entire Pascal folks. We really appreciate the relationship, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bariano. Mr. Bonacontri, Ms. Bonacontri.
Yes. Good morning, delegation. I'm very privileged to be here. I just wanted to give a little bit of context, and I truly appreciate the overview that was given by Delegate Munoz, because that was pretty much what I was going to say. All of those facts are exactly accurate. We have incredibly important crisis stabilization services for the county. During the pandemic, we stayed open. We were able to serve literally thousands of persons in need of substance use and behavioral health immediate needs over the entire course of the pandemic, whether that was quarantining folks that were COVID positive, keeping them with psychological emergencies outside of emergency departments. We would love to let you hear that we have purchased another facility. It is actually going to be able to serve as many persons as our current facility in Crownsville does. It is technically in Gambrills, but it's kind of on the line of Gambrills and Odenton. I heard recently that one of our delegates has actually driven by and seen the facility. And I wanted to give a little bit of a backstory about Delegate Munoz and I and our ability to understand this problem so differently than maybe a lot of the other delegation. Delegate Munoz was actually an intern at Crisis Response many years ago, and she has a unique clinical background prior to having gone to law school. She understands back when the crisis response system did not have the Pascal Crisis Stabilization Center, and when a mobile crisis clinician went to the field, and when they were interfacing with a person in need, there was nowhere to actually bring that individual in crisis and have them stay in a residential facility. I had advocated for it for years and years and years, and now we do have it. And back when she was in the crisis response system, she and I knew each other, and it was not available. And now she can see the fruits of having a crisis stabilization center literally in the middle of Anne Arundel County. And frankly, it's just not enough. We have run out of beds already. We are serving the entire state of Maryland. We would like to do more. We have purchased a residential home that is C3, so it actually is a very unique.
Ms. Bonacontri, I'm going to ask you to please summarize.
Sure. Essentially, we have a bond bill request in because we know that the renovation is going to be extensive, probably $1 million or more. We are committed to doing it, and we are asking for $350 from the Senate side and $350 from the House side. And we appreciate so much the support that the legislation has provided us in the past, and we would like to help in a more profound way in the future.
Thank you. And so I'll take the first question, but just as a reminder to all of our witnesses, there is a 2-minute time limit, and seeing us keeping the clock. So I will ask you to summarize if once you reach that 2-minute mark. Senator Riley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just 2 points of information. Yes, I have cross-filed the bond bill on my side. Number 2, as a point of reference, the Pascal Center was established by Robert Pascal, former county executive from Anne Arundel County. He had a tragedy in his family with drugs, and he put his money up so that all of us can benefit. And number 2, very quickly, Catherine Bonacontri, could you share with us how many beds you have, how many days, how many patient days your institution service in last year, 2020. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. So we have 16 residential crisis services beds, which are behavioral health or mental health. And we also have between 20 and 24, what we call substance use disorder beds, which serve immediate substance use needs through the SOAR grant, the State Opioid Response Grant. So total number of beds can fluctuate day to day, but that's simply not enough. We have 16 and 16 or 16 and 20 and 24, depending on the day. We constantly are asked to go over census. We served probably, I'm getting a rough estimate right now, 14,000 service days, which is an incredible number, but that's accurate for how many times we have served human beings since we opened.
Thank you for that additional information. So before moving to the sponsor of the Anne Arundel County Fair, which is next, I want to take a point of personal privilege and just say that I have had the opportunity to see the work at that's being done at the Crownsville facility. And I know as we kind of continue to go through the pandemic, there's certainly a need for additional behavioral health resources. So I want to thank you for what you do. So with that, we'll move on to the sponsor for the Anne Arundel County Fair. Delegate Munoz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Riley. Again, this is another bond initiative that Senator Riley has been kind enough to cross-file in the Senate. And like the previous bill I just introduced, both of these bills are bipartisan and being co-sponsored by Delegate Nick Kipke and Delegate Mark Chang. So I just wanted to thank all of them for their support on these really important initiatives. And just to be really brief, going from mental health in the community to education and community engagement, the Anne Arundel County Fair is requesting $50,000 to do some really important work. And again, like the previous bill, they have a track record of support from the legislature, and they're an all-volunteer agricultural fair organization serving people all across our county. And I was, lucky enough to enjoy the Anne Arundel County Fair and all the many events that they hold throughout the year as a child growing up here. And I'm so privileged to be able to now allow my children to experience these things. And so the work that they need done is really involving safety and repair and maintenance. And I just ask, everyone's support.
Do you have any witnesses?
I believe we do, but I might turn it over to Senator Riley next.
John Faber, are
Senator
you
Riley?
Yes. Both Bruce Bariano and John Faber are here to represent the fair.
Okay, just a moment. Senator Riley, did you have anything?
Sure. Just want to let you know that the fair is a state-owned facility, which is leased to the foundation that runs it. We come back on a regular basis for public safety and upgrades to this aging facility. Mr. Faber, when you make your comments, could you share with the group how many people come through the turnstile every year? Last year, we were able to get money for a new sign. Today, it's public safety, a sprinkler system in one of their main buildings. Strongly recommend support of this project. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Riley. Mr. Faber.
Yes, hi, I'm John Faber, president of the Anne Arundel County Fair. As Senator Riley mentioned, fair has been in existence in Crownsville for 40 years. We are celebrating our 70-year birthday this year. Previously, it's Sandy Point State Park, and now we're at the Crownsville location. And given that we're 40 years at Crownsville, we're starting to see some wear and tear on the buildings and the utilities, and that's what this request is for. It's mainly to repair and replace the sprinkler systems. We have two large buildings on the fairgrounds. They are repurposed. They were repurposed 40 years ago, old airport hangars, and they were retrofitted with a sprinkler system. And those sprinkler systems in both those buildings are failing. We've had we have a major valve that needs to be repaired, and the overhead piping is slowly corroding away, rusting away from the inside out. So that is what we need the money for. We typically have about, on a given year, for the fair, we have 25 to 30,000 people coming through the turnstiles. We probably have double that with all the other rentals we have throughout the year. We do carry on rentals throughout the year, and those rentals are mostly to support the fair itself in September.
Mr. Faber, thank you for that testimony. Delegate Munoz, do you have any other witnesses?
I believe Mr. Bruce Bariano might have a couple things to say real quick.
Mr. Bariano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the delegation. I, on behalf of the fair, want to very strongly thank Senator Riley and Delegate Munoz, and thank the entire delegation for the continuous strong support of the fair. It really is one of the most genuine, real, fabulous fairs of all the counties in our state. Again, these are not just words, they're really strong feelings. The entire delegation over the years has been so strong and helpful to the fair. You have visited it, you have had ceremonies there. The money we've gotten in the past has been spent promptly and productively, improving and maintaining the integrity of the fair. And it is the only fair of all the fairs in the state that has a camel rides. And that's a real distinction that we should all enjoy. So thank you in advance for your continued support of the fair, and would urge a favorable consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Bariano. Do we have the bill sponsor for the John Hopkins birthplace?
That'd be me, myself, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Riley.
Thank you very much. The Johns Hopkins birthplace, called Whitehall, is been largely ignored for the past 80 years. A fellow named Robert Brown, whose family is connected to the property, came to town and has made a significant effort to open it up to the public. We've had the governor come and visit. It is a 250-year-old building, maybe more than that, and needs substantial improvements. I've been working with Mr. Brown to make sure he is doing the right things at the right time, and I would like to turn the program over to Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Senator Riley. And Mr. Brown?
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. Can you see me?
Yes.
Because I'm frozen on my screen here.
We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry, it's an old iBook, but I'm glad you can hear me. Well, good morning, all, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity, and want to extend my thanks in particular to Senator Riley, who's
Mr. Brown, you're frozen.
All right, it looks like we've lost him. If he comes back, we'll continue. But Mr. Chair, he has secured funding for the purchase of the property, so he will have ownership of it in a very short period of time. He's also reached out to the governor. There's a small grant in the governor's budget, and within 12 months, this project should be well underway to restoring. The key points of his talking points, which he sent to every member of this delegation, includes the fact that it's going to be an inn, nonprofit inn, museum, scholarships for those. The scholarships will be named for the indentured people who worked on the property. One of the very unique attitudes of giving back to those who did the actual work on the property. Only Georgetown is the only other facility I know who has done something like that. He's got considerable community support. He holds beer gardens during the summer, spring, and fall, and hundreds of people come every week to enjoy the property. He also talked about having an arboretum. So, Mr. Chairman, if he was here, I'm sure he would review those highlights, which are also on the printed sheet that he gave to you. Would request a favorable report on this bond bill initiative.
Thank you, Senator Riley, and you did an excellent job in his stead, so we appreciate that. And I would ask members to review the packets of information that has been provided. I see a question from Delegate Henson.
Chair, thank you, Senator Riley, for bringing the bill. Is there anything in the scope of work to include interpretation of the lives of those that were enslaved at the property?
Delegate, that's an excellent question. As you know, I'm working with Janice Hayes Williams to fund a bond bill project called Hear My Name. Is that what they call it? Say my name, excuse me. Mr. Brown is anticipating a museum dedicated to this issue. Johns Hopkins was held out as a very important person in the abolition history until we found out through census records that he actually had slaves on his property. Since then, our attitude has changed, not only to recognize that before the Civil War, he released these folks, but that the museum will be used to help reinforce the historic stories of this important historic property. Thank you for your question.
Senator Riley, thank you for the response, and Delegate Henson, thank you for the question. At this point, we're going to move to our final bond bill hearing for the day, and that's could we have the sponsor for Swan Park and Willows Park Crofton Civic Association?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
That's both of us.
Yeah, both of us. Mr.
The
Chairman,
mighty 33 team, all the bond bills today.
Yeah, Mr. Brown popped up back on the screen with his blue on. He's in his historic building that doesn't have heat, so I think he's a little cold right now. But we're going to move on to the Civic Association. I've lived in Crofton 47 years. When we got here, it was a small community. We had a couple of small community parks. Since that time, we're one of the largest areas in Anne Arundel County, but the sports and playground equipment has not kept up with the growth. Now, those of you in budget and taxation world know there is actually a special program funded by the state of Maryland to help improve and secure playgrounds. The only problem with that is it's restricted to counties, cities, and municipalities. Crofton is a special benefit tax district. We don't qualify for those other pots of money in the state. So this is our attempt to help bring some state money back into Crofton to help address parks and recreation needs. Delegate, do you have anything to add to this?
Nope, you summed it up. But I do know that we have Mr. Simon here, so and I'm sure he can close the loop for us.
Martin Simon.
Mr. Simon.
Good morning, Chairman Rogers. Thank you, and members of the delegation. I appreciate you having me here today. I'd like to thank Senator Riley and Delegate Bagnell for their cross sponsorship of this initiative. It is something that we are very much hoping can come to fruition here. As president of the Crofton Civic Association, I'm here to request your support of this bond initiative that would greatly help the CCA to modernize 2 of our 3 aging parks here in the Crofton Triangle, Swan Park and the Willows Park. The playground fixtures at these parks were purchased back in 1998, 24 years ago. And although still somewhat functional, each piece is in need of certain repairs, but no longer supported by the manufacturer. 2 of the larger pieces no longer meet current safety standards and cannot be retrofitted to do so. Put simply, this equipment has served our children well, but has met the end of its life cycle. Accessibility is another driving force behind our desire to upgrade our playgrounds, especially Swan Park. Currently, there is no access to any of the equipment for those with limited mobility. Our plan includes alterations for wheelchair access. The CCA has been saving money toward this goal for several years, and in FY23, we'll have approximately $50,000 to apply to this project. Unfortunately, estimates we've received for Swan Park Playground alone are nearly $200,000. With our tax district budget cap and the reality of our residents already slated to pay significantly higher taxes for the next 15 years due to last year's purchase of our front yard enclave property, which we did, by the way, with no county or state financial assistance. It would be quite a few years before we're able to do this project on our own. Our community is seeing a significant demographic shift, with many of our senior residents being replaced by young families, many with multiple children, who would all benefit from safe and accessible playgrounds close to home. Our Parks Rejuvenation Committee has conducted a community-wide survey to gauge stakeholder preferences, and that data guided our design priorities. This project could be ready to go with your funding approval in June and completed by November of this year. As Senator Riley said, we have sought other sources of grant funding in the past, including DNR's Community Parks and Recreation Playgrounds Program. But again, because we are not a municipality, we are not eligible. Therefore, we respectfully request the state's assistance with this very worthwhile endeavor that would benefit many in our nearly 13,000 resident community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simon. Are there any questions? Seeing none, just a couple announcements for this morning before we close. Just a reminder that our dues, we want to try to get those in. I know that Vice Chair Bagnall's making a list and she's checking it twice. So let's get those turned in so that we can cut a check to the Anne Arundel County Food Bank. Also, on behalf of Minority Leader Emeritus Kipke, the VFW in Pasadena is collecting Valentine's Day cards that will be distributed to hospitalized service members and veterans at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. He has a table outside of his office which has blank cards that folks can fill out, complete. And I think the deadline is today. Correct me if I'm wrong, Delegate Kipke. And they're actually offering a prize for who has the most creative and innovative card. So with that, are there any other announcements from the delegation? With that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? It's been moved and properly seconded. Everyone have a wonderful weekend. Meeting is adjourned.